A few weeks ago, I released a devlog announcing Whale Well, a short adventure game. I'm happy to say that the game is now finished and ready to be played. This is a project that for a couple of years was abandoned only for me to pick it back up and finish it off as a side project while I take a break from my main game project, Love MO1. Despite the short development time, the game went through major changes since I last showed it off. The first thing I did to revive the project was to completely scrap it and rebuild it from scratch in a new engine. The original project was made in GameMaker Studio using GML, but I hadn't touched the engine since I abandoned the project. Instead of having to completely relearn how GameMaker works, I decided to remake the game in Unity, which I'm more comfortable using. One thing new I had to learn was how to make Unity work with pixel art. When I first imported my assets and set them to the appropriate settings, they still weren't pixel perfect. This meant that pixels overlapped partially, making the overall resolution inconsistent. I didn't have to worry about this in GameMaker, because everything in GameMaker works in pixels, but Unity uses vectors which don't match up to pixels because of floating point numbers. My first attempt at fixing this was to simply render the scene at actual resolution, but that obviously wasn't a good solution for a game as tiny as this. I even tried snapping the game objects to a grid in code, before eventually I learned about the pixel perfect camera component, which does all this automatically. But in this process I thought a lot about resolution, and I wasn't satisfied with the art style of my game. Movement on screen wasn't smooth when pixel snapping was on, and the game felt better without it. Additionally, rendering pixel art text that small was a strain to read, and I didn't want to use a non-pixel art font with pixel graphics. I searched for a solution to this problem when eventually I realized that I could just scale up my pixel art. I realized this because I had already seen it done by emulators. In particular, I played through Pokemon Black and White on a DS emulator with the GPU scale factor set to 4x. This is a unique, if a little janky art style that retains the simplicity of pixel art while resizing it to be smooth rather than jagged. I had no clue how to do something like this in Unity, but a Google search for pixel scaling quickly resulted in finding a pixel art scaling website. So I slowly went through all of the existing assets and ran them through a 400% upscaling on the website and re-imported them into the game. I settled on this as a pipeline, and would continue creating pixel art in Sprite to be upscaled before importing. As a whole, the game simply looks better upscaled. It looks a little janky, but in an endearing way hopefully. After getting the Unity project caught up with the old version and scaling up all the art, I was able to shift towards making new content for the game. But before adding new locations and characters, I needed to hammer down the story item progression. As an adventure game, the whole game revolves around the collected and traded items, and this was necessary to establish before continuing to add content to the game aimlessly. In PureF, I gathered screenshots of the various characters and locations created or planned, and arranged them to form a flow of a map. I added notes for which items are gained and lost by talking to the characters and arranged those as well. This was a super fast way of creating a map layout and narrative design. When that was finished, I could adjust the existing asset locations and start on the new ones. In the game, the player Duck journeys into the belly of a whale to discover a small civilization fueled by the harvesting of whale oil. I designed the hub map of the whale's interior as a large square with points of interest sprinkled throughout. At the center is the whale oil and harvesting factory, which requires an ID to get inside of. Then there is a butcher shop selling the whale meat the factory harvests. On the other side of the map, there is a greenhouse trying to grow plants in the poor conditions of being inside a whale, and there is a laboratory trying to create alternative fuel. Below them is a giant squid and a pirate ship. There is even a museum hosting artifacts of the whale. I created 11 songs in total for the game, which is enough for every location to have a unique sound. For the main menu track, I created a bouncy song with Bit Crush Duck Quacks. I created simple 4-chord pad songs for Falling Down the Whale and the Laboratory. I love this upbeat loop that contrasts with the butcher shop it plays in. And my favorite track is the Factory Interior song, which features the bass and lead harmonizing in a simple melody in fifths. This game was intended to be completed quickly, so there are some things that I would have changed if I had more time. For example, when the player rebuilds the broken pirate ship, there is no animation for building, so the fixed ship just appears. There are a few points where some animations or sound effects would have been nice. I also could have varied the hub world's design by adding more props than barrels and lights. The ending could also have been improved with something extra like a cutscene, but didn't have time to do more than a victory end screen. The small game is available for free on Steam or itch.io. It's available in browser on itch.io, but I recommend downloading for a better experience. If you enjoyed the game or the devlogs I've been making, consider donating when you download the game on itch.io. Subscribe to follow the progress on my other games. This has been Ryan9, thank you for watching.